असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मामृतं गमय ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः Come on, chant this mantra.
असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मामृतं गमय ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मामृतं गमय ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः
I now request Dr. Naren Pathak to please take over.
Hello, sorry ma'am. Narendra Pathak is not over here.
All right, then.
Invite Dr. Habib. Okay.
All right. I now invite Professor Dr. Mamun Habib from Bangladesh to please deliver his keynote address.
Thank you so much. Are you hearing?
Yeah, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. I'd like to request, please turn off everybody microphone. Otherwise, there is some noise and echo is going on.
Yes, sir.
So, first of all, thanks for inviting me in such kind of international conference. I'm honored to become the keynote speaker of this conference. I was listening the lecture of Professor Mirza, the Vice Chancellor, and I was so much happy to understand that how he's delivered his thought and knowledge regarding this research, especially the basic research, fundamental research. So I think it gives me some little bit less burden to discuss in my speech. Basically, I like to talk about the publication ethics and the publication malpractice statement. And as you know that I am the editor-in-chief of the Scopus India Journal, so I'd like to share some real-life experience with you, so the audiences, they can get the more real-time experience. As I am talking about this one is that what I said, publication ethics and publication malpractice statement. We divided this by 3 segments. One is that as an author, your responsibility, your duties. And then second stage is as a reviewer's, your responsibility. And finally, as an editor, board member, or editor-in-chief, your responsibility. As you are familiar with that, everybody here is most of them the university-oriented people, like the university professor, university lecturer, I believe the PhD scholars. So you have an idea about this, and whatever you do that research, whatever the basic research or fundamental research or applied research, finally our ultimate target is the publication. So we have to go for the publication, to publish the paper, maybe the international conference proceedings, or maybe the journal, or maybe the book chapter, or maybe it could be the book. So as an author, that what kind of response you have to follow from the ethical point of view. I think you understand our main theme of this conference, ethical consideration you have to think. So I'd like to focus about that part. As an author, what kind of response you have to think from the ethical point of view. First of all, as an author, you have to understand the reporting the standard. So you have to ensure this one, that whether you are doing any kind of works, you have to ensure the standard of the work. And sir, today, Vice Chancellor sir, today morning, he mentioned about the quality of works. It's the most important thing. When you are the author, if you think that you'd like to publish the paper at any cost, just for your promotion, just for you need the one publication, just for finish the PhD, just finish the MTech, that is not the solution to write the paper. You have to understand that whether you did the original research works, And if it is original research works, then you have to think how you can present this one. So that's why I like to use the term, you have to maintain the standard of the report, standard of the works. A paper should contain sufficient detail and references to permit the others to replicate the work. You did some work, but you don't have enough references, then how the next researcher they will start? And as an author, I just remind you one thing is that this is not your responsibility just to publish one paper. Your responsibility, you have to create the path for the future researchers. So that's why you have to focus that what kind of further works you can, further people, further researcher they can do. This is the part of your report, this is a part of your paper. So you have to ensure this one. Secondly, the data access and retention. I think by chance also mentioned about these issues that now the question is that what type of data you're using, whether primary data or secondary data. So most of the young researcher, young scholars, they have to start from the secondary data. So secondary data means already published somewhere, we have to use it as a reference, especially for the literature review. The question is that when you are collecting any information from the others, this is your responsibility. You have to quote the author's name is there as a text citation. So this citation very important in the text. You have to mention, and you have to mention as well in the references bibliography. The question is that when you are taking the sum of the one paragraph or the few lines from the like the other authors, you must quote it his name. And the next question come up what he said that if you do this one quotation from the other authors, is it the right that to use the whole paragraph? You know, the modern publication ethics, we use that COPE, Code of Publication Ethics, based on the UK. So they're changing their dimension of the like research ethics. So they mentioned we don't prefer to use any quotation from others directly. We prefer that quotation should be paraphrasing, and after the paraphrasing, but still you have to mention the previous author's name. Sorry. So what I said that even after the paraphrasing of the quotation, you have to use that initial author name as a citation. So it means that we are disguising the quotation, the full quotation. We are encouraging. You can paraphrasing that one and you can use that one. Secondly, if you use the like primary data, like if you do the survey, the question is that survey data. You know, this is the one experience that we noticed when you supervise a PhD scholar, when I work as editorial board member. Sometimes some of the authors they publish the paper based on the survey, but those are not the real survey; it's a fake survey. Suppose they are using the number of respondents, suppose the 50 respondents, but they are using the 250. So what you said, this is the fake survey. So this is your responsibility as an author. You are doing the real survey, real-time survey or not. And I just remind you one issue is that when you do the real survey, you have to keep your data for future references. This is the confidentiality rules, regulation you have to follow. But if anybody can challenge you, so you have to keep this data. So we call it raw data. And this is the one kind of norms that you have to keep this raw data next 10 years. So when they ask you any cross question and it's come up, or maybe after the publication, the finding, there's some question will come up for the findings, then you can explain that how you are getting this one. Go to the next one, originality. What is a very common term we are using, plagiarism. You know, this kind of plagiarism issue is a very common issue, copy and paste. We are very familiar with this one. I already explained this one. In a unique work, you have to understand the unique work, you have to understand the original work. So what I said that you are taking some of the part from someone, but you don't want to use the references, you don't want to mention their names. Even you are not doing the paraphrasing or even doing the paraphrasing, but you have to mention the original author name. Plagiarism in all its forms constitutes the unethical publishing behavior which is unacceptable. You know that the modern technological advancement, we are using different software. There is a Turnitin software, I-Indicate software we are using. So this question will come up when you're using software, we are getting this kind of issue. I just share with you so that you can understand that why I'm talking about this one. Everybody's hearing? Yeah.
You are audible, sir. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm in 2013. I received one email from the one editor-in-chief. I received the one email from one editor-in-chief in the another journal. That editor-in-chief sent me email and he asked me, there is the one author, he published the one paper in International Journal of Supply Chain Management where I am the editor-in-chief. So he published the paper in that journal in 2012, December. And then that author, he submitted that same paper for another journal in 2013. And the editor-in-chief of the journal, he sent me email, the paper already accepted, and now this is the time to, before the publication, they checked the software. So when they checked by the Turnitin software, they noticed the plagiarism percentage more than 90%. And they understood that means it's a copy and paste, or maybe it's already published somewhere. And they explored, and then finally they sent me email to me. And I just use this experience. I don't want to mention the author name. And that editor-in-chief, he's a university professor. He sent me email, and he keep the CC many people. And finally, I understood that he also used the CC, the University Grants Commission, a few members' email address there. Because the author, he is a university faculty assistant professor, and he was pursuing the PhD, and his supervisor was a professor. So that's why he like to use the UGC members' email address there. And he asked me, what is the action from my point of view? And you know that as an editor-in-chief, whether we are promoting the research work. So I sent the email at first the author that you have to withdraw the paper from the journal, and you have to send a special letter for apologize that this is your mistake. This is your your mistake. This is the unethical job in the research. We called it the unethical research work. So you have to send the email to the editor-in-chief of the journal. And the author, he did this one, and he replied in my email. I still recall that. In fact, he has no idea that any paper could not be published in the two journal. And one thing. Second thing, his supervisor, he did not say anything about this issue, that you cannot publish the same paper in the two places. And then that editor-in-chief, he sent again email to everyone. He was not happy with this decision. He would like to take some action against the author. You know that then I explained the easy way to the editor-in-chief and the others that I believe that still we are very young in the research area. We are not very expert. All professors are not expert on research. They are expert on teaching. It is our Asian culture, subcontinent culture, that we are dominating the teaching rather than research. So even the professors, they are the professor, but they don't have the enough experience on the research work. So that's why maybe his supervisor professor, he doesn't know that the author, he cannot publish the same paper in the two places. Or maybe he didn't explain his supervisor properly. So that is the one thing what you said here, originality, plagiarism. So you have to remember that nowadays the loss of software is very easy to track, easy to understand, easy to explore. Go to the next one, multiple redundant on concurrent publication. You know, it happens that some of the authors, they submit the paper in the Scopus Index Journal or ISA Index Journal, and it's taking a long time for the review process. In the meantime, they think that it is better to submit the paper in the another journal. And let's see which acceptance will come first. And the problem is that some of them, they cannot understand that this is unethical, because the concurrent submission, and the system is that when you submit any paper in any journal, you cannot submit that journal in any places. So this is a multiple redundant submission is not acceptable, is unethical. And go to the next one, acknowledgement of sources. Definitely, you have to remember what you mentioned earlier, reference. Properly, you have to mention the references. It's very important. If you take the interview of the survey people, face-to-face interview, you have to mention from where you did this one, how you did this one, what place you did this one. It means that you have to explain all kind of sources. And when, as an author, if you acknowledge the other sources, it not means that you are undermining yourself. You are giving some contribution to the prospective researchers so that in future they will use your reference and they will also mention your name as acknowledgement of sources. Go to the next one, the authorship of the paper. This is very important. As an author, you have to make sure that your ownership as an author. Unfortunately, I just use the one term. Nowadays, it happens. Suppose there's one author, he publishes one paper, and then he uses a 5, 6, 7 co-authors' name. Why use the 5, 6, 7 co-authors' name? The dean name is there, vice chancellor name is there, his boss name is there. All are he's doing for the promotion. Unethical. You know that this is your paper, your name will be there. And maybe you can take another 1 or 2 who is your supervisor who is contributing the paper. If the author or co-author he has no contribution, why you are using their names? It's unethical. So this is very important nowadays. When you notice that the one paper, the number of authors, the 10, it means that there's something wrong because it's not the proper way to write the paper. 10 persons, they should not contribute the one paper. So this is an authorship issue. This is unethical if you use a lots of authors' name. Disclosure and conflict of interest is very important. You have to include the statement disclosing any financial. If you do any kind of financial help from the others, you have to mention that one. And definitely you have to mention if you have any kind of substantial conflict of interest, you have to mention clearly there. Especially the ethical, you know that if you do any kind of research on the medical science, you have to mention ethical statement. It's very important that how you are getting that approval from the ethical board. And finally, that the fundamental errors in the published works. You already published the one paper, but you notice something wrong. You notice your survey was something wrong. Any kind of fundamental errors. So you have to notify to the editor-in-chief or editor board member. So that is something errors we are observing in the published works. So this is your responsibility as an author. It is not responsible just only to publish your paper. You have to ensure that your papers published properly. Your works is that like 100% ethical works. So this is the from the author's responsibility when you think about the publication. Now go to the next one, response of the reviewers. Now come to the point is that when you are the reviewer. So I think you already understand reviewers means you have to have some of the experience in the review process. You are familiar with the review process, you are the expert on the research. So first of all, your responsibility, contribution to editorial decision. Editorial board member or editor-in-chief will take the decision, but the reviewer is the intermediate place. So that means that the authors, they will get the review comments from the reviewers. So editor-in-chief or editorial board member, they will assign the reviewer. So this is very important that you have to contribute to the editorial decision. You are doing the own review, suppose a peer reviewing process. You have to submit your own opinion, own comments. But remember one thing, when you mention this is that suppose the paper will be rejected. When you mention they use the term the rejected, you have to give the credentials that which ground, which points you mention that you reject the paper. The most important rejection issue is that if it's a plagiarism. If it's a plagiarism more than 40%, then you have to go to that one. But you can reject the paper if more than 40%. If it is more than 80%, no question you have to reject the paper. If it is like the 50% or 60%, then you can give some major correction and lots of comments based on your observation. But what I said that you have to clarify, you have to defend yourself that why you say accept the major correction, accept the minor correction, or the reject, which ground. So that is the contribution to the editorial decision. Secondly, the promote response. I know that some of the audiences here from those are the professors. It happens many in the world when the editor board member they are using your email address as you are the reviewer. They are sending the email to you to review this paper. Most of them are so busy they could not get enough time. So unfortunately, they could not respond. I always mention this one. When you are the researcher, you are the university professor, you have the PhD degree, you are not only for the one country. You're the global people. So you're the global citizen. This is your responsibility. You have to contribute to others. Now, question is there, why you have to be the promote response from the reviewer? Because there is no financial contribution. When you are the professors, you should not think everything in terms of money. Sometimes you have to think your contribution is the ethical point of view. If you could not contribute the others to review the paper, then how they will understand the paper quality? I just shared the one experience with you. Every month I'm getting that PhD dissertation from India, Malaysia, to review the PhD as an external examiner. Sometimes it happens, I am in burden, but I believe it is my responsibility. And sometimes I could not get the honorarium for this one, but I never asked them to provide the honorarium because I believe this is my responsibility to contribute them. The same thing when you are work as a reviewer, this is our responsibility. You have to respond promptly. You know that you are thinking that you don't have enough time, you couldn't get the money. I will not do this one, but it's very important for the authors. They are waiting for your comments. So this is very important when you work in the reviewer. You have to ensure this one that you have to be the very promotive action to review the papers. Confidentiality. You are receiving one paper. Maybe it could be the blind review, so you cannot see the author's name. But even is a blind review, but you can understand that which country you are getting this one. You can understand based on the contents that which perspective they are saying. There is a one paper is coming from Uttar Pradesh of India. When they're mentioning inside of the paper Uttar Pradesh, India, then we understand this paper came from India. That is the irresponsible confidentiality. But sometimes it's not the blind review. If it's open, if there is not the blind review, then maybe you can see the author's name. You have to keep the confidentiality. Even it could be happen that some of the authors they can communicate.
Hello, hello. 1 minute, sir. 1 minute, sir. Kindly. Yeah. Unmute your mic, sir. Hello.
हाँ सर बताएं.
Unmute your mic, sir. Hello, Habib, sir.
Yeah. Are you hearing now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. So you couldn't hear me the 1 minute?
Okay, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, no problem. So what I'm talking about the confidentiality is very important that when you get any paper, you have to mention, you should not disclose the author's name. You shouldn't communicate with the authors, even the email it is there. Maybe there's some authors they can communicate with you, but you have to maintain the confidentiality. It is not like even your friends, you know that. Even maybe they're your colleagues, but you can disclose their names to others. Even their paper may be rejected, but you cannot mention to others. It is a confidential. And then
हेलो मैम, इसमें अल्फाबेटिकल नाम दिखता है. आप लास्ट में जो वी है मेरे साथ है. देखो अभी मैं भेजता हूँ आपको. हेलो. दिख रहा है, बिल्कुल दिख रहा है. VC उर्दू करके दिख रहा है. VC UAFU करके दिख रहा है.
Standards of objectivity, you know that when you review the paper, you have to check their objectives. So you have to check what is their objectives, what is their hypothesis, and which ground they are explaining that paper, which ground they are writing the paper. If you could understand the scope of the paper, sometimes it's very difficult. Whether it's relevant to you or not, you have to confirm earlier. If it is not relevant to you, you have to acknowledge, you have to mention to the editorial board member, editor-in-chief. This is not in my field, so you can decline the review the paper. And definitely what I said here, that you have to understand that acknowledgement of sources. When you review the paper, you have to understand the author, they are mentioning the sources or not. They properly explain that from where they getting the paper, what you mentioned earlier, the references. Even it is a not quotation, you have to understand whether they mentioned the citation or not. It's very important. And it is one of the parameters to when you review the paper that you have to understand this one. And definitely disclose and conflict of interest, whether they mention or not. If it's the ethical, some issues are there, financial issues, they're getting the fund for the university. This is a research project, they have to mention the project name. They have to mention that acknowledgement. Now come to our last part. Now, so we understand that our last part is that responsibility of the editorial board, responsibility of the editor-in-chief. You know that your all publication decision will come from the editorial board, editor-in-chief. But the question is there, how you're doing the fair play. How you'll do the fair play. I just give them one example so that you can understand. Suppose you're the editor-in-chief. So you send this paper to the 3 reviewers. One from the India, another reviewer from the suppose in the UK, another from the US. And the author, he from the suppose he came from the Malaysia. So now come to the one point is that the Indian reviewer, he said this is the accepted with the minor revision. The UK, he said that accepted with the major correction. And US reviewer, he said that this is rejected. Look very carefully, fair play. Accepted with the minor correction, accept. So there is a 3 options. Accepted with minor correction, major correction, and rejected. So now this is your role, how you can manage this one. Now I just share with you, it happens, though we mentioned as an editor board member, editor-in-chief, we shouldn't check the race, we shouldn't check the ethnicity, we shouldn't check their color, we shouldn't check the gender, we shouldn't check the place. But it happens many in the world that the people, they could ignore themselves. So what I said that I got this kind of experience when the Asian paper, most of the cases rejected by the US reviewer. So their perspective, their thinking, their ideology, it couldn't match the Asian culture. So that's why sometimes this kind of problem is coming. So when you notice that accepted with the major correction, accepted the minor correction, and rejected, then now comes the next question that you are editor-in-chief and you are editor, how you can take the decision. That is the fair play. And definitely your decision should be accepted. Definitely should be accepted. Maybe you can take the decision of whether the minor correction or major correction. But you cannot reject the paper because some of the 2 already they mentioned the accepted minor correction, major correction. This is your job as a responsibility to make sure this one. Confidentiality. I like to share with you one thing is that you are editor-in-chief. It not means that you are everything in the world. You are the editor board member. It not means that you know everything. You have some limitation. So when any paper submitting the system, you can understand who is the author, who is his affiliation. But you cannot disclose this one to others. Maybe he or she could be your friend, but you have to make sure the confidential. You know, I got this experience. Even my colleague, they submit the paper. I'm the editor-in-chief. I noticed, but I try to follow this on the fair play. So if the reviewer demands to accept it, it should be accepted. Not decision come from me. Even I can handle this one, but there's a question of ethics. That is our main discussion today: the ethical consideration in the research, ethical consideration in the publication. So you have to make sure this one, even you can disclose. Even maybe your friend said that you've submitted paper, our paper in your journal, but your journal is rejected. This is not your hand. The decision come up from the reviewers. Yes, final decision come from you, but you cannot take the opposite direction from the reviewers. Disclosure and confidential, I already mentioned. This one is very important. And then it's journal self citation is very important nowadays. You know, it happens in many journals. They mention clearly that this paper is relevant to journal. You can submit this paper to that journal. It means that he has a connection to that journal. Or they mention you have to take some of the references from that paper. You should take some references from that journal. This is a one kind of unethical job. You can mention you are involved that you cannot say that this is the best journal. You are involved in that journal. You cannot say that you have to take some reference from there. It's very important. The thinking is that we'd like to request one thing is that when you are working the research, that the citation is very important, but it's not like that we like to increase my citation. I know some of the authors in the world, you know, they are using their own citation in another paper. Even this is not the relevant paper. The scope is different because they like to increase their citation. This is unethical. You have to ensure that this is the relevant topics, this is the relevant idea. So you can use that reference, no problem. But if it's not relevant, you cannot use this, you cannot do this one. And finally, involvement and cooperation in the investigations. I think I already gave the one example of this one that earlier, what I mentioned. Suppose if you are the editorial board member, editor-in-chief, so maybe some of them, they can send the email for any kind of investigation, any kind of cooperation. they like to do some investigation against the author or something, you have to do cooperation. But again, I remind you that you are the editor board member, you are editor-in-chief. Your responsibility, you have to ensure that fair play, and you have to cooperation will be in the ethical way, so there is no question come up from the future people, future researchers. You did some unethical job with them. So this is very important discussion from the editor board member and editor-in-chief, how you could do the fair play from ethical point of view. So I think I'm in the end of the stage of my lecture, but I like to give the few minutes for the audiences to ask me some question. I like to reply, so that that will be more fruitful. Before finish, I just remind you one thing is that I just discussed the publication ethics and publication malpractice statement from the author perspective, from the reviewer perspective, and from the editor board member perspective. So maybe there is a lots of discussion. I think the other keynote speaker will discuss. So now I like to request our organizer to give some space for the question and for the asking the question from the audiences. Any question, please?
Have you any question? Nilesh Patel, please stop your screen. Nilesh Patel, please stop your screen, please.
Sir, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, please. Who is there? Can you mention your name?
Yes, yes, sir. This is Dr. Sunil Sani, Assistant Professor at Tagore College, Port Blair, and from India. Sir, my question is this one, sir. As you mentioned that we should not write so many names as a co-author, but some of the universities are following that research scholar has to add the name of the supervisor, guide supervisor. So whether it is to be followed or whether it is also unethical, though the work has been done totally by researcher only, but in few of the universities it is must that you have to mention the supervisor's name also.
Thank you so good question. You know that this is the obligation of the PhD research and as well as MTech research, that when you do the publishing paper, you're the scholar, that definitely you must use that your supervisor name as an co-author. Not only that, because when you mention the supervisor name, it is the one kind of credentials that you are doing the research under his supervision. But what I said earlier, that you shouldn't include those names; those are not relevant to there. And now the question is coming from you that is totally solely your work, but why you have to use the supervisor name? That is the protocol, that norms you have to follow. Yes, you are finished your PhD, now you are publishing the paper. Now it's not necessary that you have to use the supervisor name. But I noticed some of the PhD scholars, even after finishing the PhD, due to the contribution for the supervisor, they are using their names. So, but I also noticed some of the PhD scholars, after finishing the PhD, they never use the supervisor name because they couldn't get the proper cooperation from the supervisor. It depends that how you are dealing with the supervisor. Next, any other question, please? Any other question, please?
Yes, sir. Nobody. Thanks a lot, sir. Over to Itik, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you, organizer, especially our madam and then our sir as well. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your effective speech.